The jungle moon of Daranus 9 was a place full of danger, even on a good day. But this was not a good day. The sky was red with smoke and fire. Strange lights flickered above the trees. Alien ships, insect-like and crawling with limbs, moved through the air, spitting acid and flame. The ground shook as explosions tore through the forest, turning trees into black ash. Private Sarah Quinn ran through the chaos, her boots slipping on blood-soaked dirt, her rifle clutched tightly in both hands. She was young, barely 20, fresh out of Earth's military academy, and this was her first real battle. It wasn't going well. Her squad had been ambushed. One moment they were scanning the area. The next, they were being ripped apart by the Velcran swarm. These creatures didn't use guns. They used claws, acid, and fear. They moved fast, faster than any training simulation had prepared her for. She had seen 3 of her team get pulled into the trees without a sound. Another had melted under a spray of green acid. Now she was alone, hiding in the ruins of a human outpost, back pressed to a broken wall, breathing hard. Her hands shook. Her chest ached. Her comm crackled to life. "Quinn, fall back to Sector 9. It was her squad leader, shouting over gunfire. "You're outnumbered." "I'm pinned," she yelled back, firing a burst toward a shadow. Her shots hit nothing. The Velcran were playing with her now. She knew it. She could feel them watching from the trees, waiting for her to move. Her heart pounded so hard it hurt. Then came the roar. It was deep. It didn't sound like a machine or even an alien voice. It was old, wild, and full of power. The Velcran hesitated. Sarah could feel the change. The air seemed to freeze. The trees above her suddenly burst apart as something massive dropped from the canopy. It landed hard, shaking the ground. Sarah looked up, expecting death. But what she saw made her forget how to breathe. It was huge, easily 5 meters tall, its body black and armored like stone, marked with glowing blue lines that pulsed like veins. It had 4 arms and a long tail, and its face was hidden behind a mask of bone. It moved like a nightmare. But it wasn't after her. The thing lunged toward the Velcran, smashing one of them into the dirt with a single blow. Another tried to leap away, but the creature grabbed it mid-air and tore it in 2. Sarah could only watch, frozen in place. The Velcran tried to fight back. One spat acid. Another struck with a blade-like limb. The monster shrugged it off like dust. Within seconds, the area was silent again, except for the sound of something. Huge breathing slowly. The beast turned toward Sarah. She raised her rifle, arms shaking. Her instinct screamed to shoot. But she didn't. The thing didn't move. It looked at her, tilting its head. Then it stepped forward, slow and calm. Sarah tried not to scream. She backed up against the wall, trapped. The beast lowered itself, until its face was close to hers. Its eyes, if that's what they were, glowed faintly behind the mask. It sniffed her. Not in a human way, more like it was reading something deeper. Her scent, her fear, her soul. She expected it to strike. Instead, it bowed. Not a quick movement. A slow, deliberate lowering of its body. Its claws touched the ground. Its head dipped. Sarah blinked, not sure if it was real. Then it rose again, turned its back to her, and stood guard. It was protecting her. She didn't understand. She didn't know why. But something had happened here. Something no one had ever seen before. This thing, this killer, this beast from the wild moons of Jakara Prime had chosen her, not as prey, but as something else. She whispered, more to herself than anything. "What are you?" The creature didn't answer. It just stood there, still and silent, watching the jungle with deadly calm. Above them, alien ships pulled back. Across the stars, war mines recorded strange readings. And in the dirt, shaking and breathless, Sarah Quinn realized that this was no longer just a fight for survival. Something ancient had just joined the war, and it had chosen her. The strange creature that had saved Sarah on Duranus 9 was unlike anything humanity had ever faced before. They called it Korzeth, a name whispered with both fear and awe across the galaxy. It was known as the apex predator of Jakara Prime, a savage world covered in thick jungles and endless storms. For centuries, Korzeth had ruled its world without rivals. Nothing survived its hunts. Not the huge thunder lizards that roamed the swamps, not the flying razor beasts that prowled the skies, and certainly not the dozens of alien races that had tried and failed to claim Jakara Prime. The creature was a living legend, a force of nature feared by every species with the right to call themselves warriors. Yet, it had never once been known to form a bond with any other life form. It was a loner, a hunter that trusted only itself in the wild. But on Duranus 9, everything changed. When Korzeth bowed before Sarah Quinn, it wasn't just a moment of strange mercy or confusion. It was a choice. Something inside that ancient beast had recognized something special in the young human. The stories told by explorers and historians spoke of humans as weak, fragile creatures, with no place among the stars' great predators and warriors. Humans were considered primitive, slow to evolve, and easily crushed by stronger alien species. Yet here was a creature built to kill everything it saw, bowing to a single recruit. That simple act sent shockwaves across star systems. The Velkron warlords who had fought humans for decades were not just worried, they were terrified. Sarah didn't understand it at first. She was scared and confused, unsure if she had somehow earned this monstrous guardian's trust, or if she was about to be eaten in a strange ritual she couldn't comprehend. But as the days passed, she realized Korzeth wasn't just protecting her. It was choosing her as a partner. The beast followed her like a shadow. It guarded her sleep, hunted by her side, and even allowed her to touch its black armor without snapping its jaws. It was a silent agreement. They were no longer alone in the war. The news of their bond spread quickly through the human military command. At first, the higher-ups doubted it was real. Stories about monsters protecting humans sounded like fairy tales from frontier worlds. But then reports came in from other battlefronts. Korzeth was cutting through Velkran patrols, destroying nests and saving human squads with savage efficiency. Where humans had been easy prey, they were now deadly hunters. Scientists were fascinated and baffled by the creature. They studied its armor, noting it was nearly impervious to energy weapons. They analyzed its speed and strength, both far beyond anything human soldiers could match. But more importantly, they observed something they hadn't expected. A strange intelligence in its eyes, a deep connection to Sarah. The predator seemed to understand her commands, anticipate her moves, and respond to her emotions. This bond changed everything for Sarah. No longer was she just a recruit fighting for survival. She became a symbol of hope. With Korzeth by her side, she felt powerful, stronger than she had ever dreamed. She trained alongside the beast, learning its ways while teaching it hers. Together, they became more than human and monster. They became a team, a force unlike any other. But the Velkran did not take this new threat lightly. Their commanders sent spies and assassins to hunt Korzeth and Sarah. The Velkran warlords unleashed larger armies, bioengineered soldiers, and even strange psychic creatures designed to break the bond between the predator and the human. The galaxy watched as the small human faction, once easy to ignore, now shook the foundations of the Velkran Empire. Entire fleets redirected their courses just to avoid crossing paths with the girl and the beast. Sarah knew the stakes were higher than ever. This bond between her and Korzeth wasn't just about survival anymore. It was a turning point in a war that could decide the fate of humanity. She pushed herself harder than ever, training day and night, learning to move with the predator, thinking like a hunter instead of a victim. Korzeth, too, seemed to grow stronger, almost as if the connection with a human awakened something inside the ancient beast that had lain dormant for centuries. In quiet moments, when the fighting stopped and the stars looked peaceful, Sarah often wondered what this bond meant. Was it just survival? Or something deeper? A partnership born from respect, trust, and maybe even something like friendship? She didn't know. But one thing was clear. Korzeth had chosen her, and with that choice came a responsibility heavier than any armor. The galaxy was no longer the same place. Where once humans were hunted, now they were hunters. And at the heart of that change stood a human recruit and the deadliest beast the stars had ever seen. Together, ready to face whatever horrors the universe could throw at them. The war had taken a new shape, and the fight for survival had just become a legend in the making. Sarah Quinn's bond with Korzeth was growing stronger with each passing day, but the war against the Velcran was becoming fiercer. The Velcran, a ruthless alien race known for their insect-like appearance and brutal tactics, refused to back down. They had once seen humans as easy prey, weak and unprepared for galactic war. But now, faced with the terrifying alliance between Sarah and the apex predator, their arrogance began to fade into fear. The Velcran High Command ordered a massive strike to eliminate this new threat once and for all. The plan was simple: trap Sarah and Korzeth in the dense, hostile jungles of the outer moon Zephyria, where the Velcran had the advantage of numbers and knowledge of the terrain. Sarah and Korzeth landed on Zephyria under cover of darkness. The moon was unlike Uranus 9. Its thick purple forests hummed with dangerous life forms and poisonous plants. Sarah knew that the Velcran had prepared an ambush. The moment they set foot, hostile scouts began to close in, their sharp limbs cutting through the undergrowth silently. But Sarah had learned not to fear. With Korzeth at her side, she moved through the shadows like a ghost. The beast's powerful limbs crushed trees and snapped branches, but it did so with careful purpose, always alert for danger. Sarah was the hunter now, not the hunted. The first attack came at dawn. Velcran soldiers surged from hidden positions, their acid sprays and razor claws aiming to overwhelm the pair. But Korzeth met them with brutal strength and unmatched speed. Its forearms swung and tore through enemies as if they were mere twigs. Sarah, moving in perfect sync with the beast, fired precise shots that disabled enemy armor and disoriented their ranks. Together they were a storm of fury, unstoppable and terrifying. The Velcran were forced to retreat, but they did not give up. Days passed in a deadly cat-and-mouse chase across the moon's wilderness. The Velcran launched relentless waves of attacks, using bioengineered beasts and advanced drones. But each time Sarah and Korzeth adapted and survived. Sarah's leadership grew stronger and her confidence soared. She was no longer the frightened recruit who had run from an ambush. Now she was a warrior who commanded fear and respect. But the physical toll was heavy. She was tired, bruised, and sometimes doubted if she could keep up with the relentless pace. Korzeth, too, showed signs of wear. Its armor cracked in places and its breathing labored after battles. One night, as they rested near a quiet river, Sarah felt the weight of the war pressing down on her. She stared at the stars above, wondering if this bond with Korzeth was a gift or a curse. The creature, sensing her unease, rested its massive head on her shoulder. In that moment, Sarah understood that they were more than just allies. They were connected by something deep and unspoken, a shared will to survive and fight. She whispered, a promise to the beast. "We'll end this war together." The turning point came when Sarah discovered the Velcran's secret weapon. Hidden deep in Zephyria's caves was a massive biolab, where the Velcran were creating a new breed of soldiers. Hybrids that combined the strength of the Velcran with the cunning of predators like Korzeth. These abominations were designed to hunt and kill human forces with terrifying efficiency. If unleashed, they could crush entire planets. Sarah knew she had to destroy the lab no matter the cost. With Korzeth leading the charge, they infiltrated the cave system. The air was thick with poisonous spores, and the sound of hissing creatures echoed in the dark. They fought through, swarms of guards and twisted beasts using every skill and weapon at their disposal. At the heart of the lab, they found the hybrids, half Velcran, half monstrous predators engineered for death. The battle was brutal. The hybrids were fast, strong, and deadly, attacking with savage precision. But Korzeth fought like a true king of the hunt, while Sarah used her quick thinking and sharpshooting to take down the hybrids one by one. The cave shook as explosives Sarah planted detonated, collapsing tunnels and destroying the lab. But victory came with a price. Korzeth was wounded badly, its armor shattered and bleeding a strange blue fluid. Sarah fought back tears as she carried the beast away from the collapsing cave. The bond between them was stronger than ever, but now it was tested like never before. Sarah stayed by Korzeth's side through long hours of healing, knowing that their fight was far from over. Word of their success spread quickly. Human forces rallied behind Sarah's courage and Korzeth's terrifying power. The war had shifted, and the Velcran realized they could no longer ignore the human predator and her beast. But Sarah knew the true challenge was still ahead. The Velcran would not rest, and the galaxy's fate depended on how far she and Korzeth were willing to go to win the war. In the quiet moments between battles, Sarah often thought about what had brought them here. A recruit saved by a beast, an impossible alliance. The galaxy's deadliest predator choosing a human as its partner. It was a story that no one could have predicted. And as she looked into Korzeth's glowing eyes, she felt ready to face whatever came next, with fire in her heart and the beast at her side. The war had grown bigger and darker, reaching far beyond the wild moons and distant planets. Sarah Quinn and Korzeth had become symbols of hope and fear for both sides. Humans cheered their courage, while the Velcran feared their growing power. The Velcran's leaders refused to let this alliance continue to weaken their empire. They gathered their best warships and generals to launch a full-scale attack on one of humanity's most important strongholds, the space station Citadel Nova, a massive fortress orbiting the mineral-rich planet Solara Prime. Losing Citadel. Nova would mean losing control over a key supply route and leaving many human colonies vulnerable. The Velcran saw an opportunity to crush the humans in one decisive strike. As the Velcran fleet emerged from hyperspace, it was unlike anything Sarah had ever seen. Hundreds of enormous warships formed a dark cloud in space, their weapons glowing, ominously ready to fire. The humans aboard Citadel Nova braced themselves for the coming storm. Inside the station, Sarah prepared alongside her team. Korzeth, despite still recovering from its wounds, stood tall and ready. The beast's armor gleamed under the station's harsh lights, and its eyes burned with a fierce determination. The bond between Sarah and the predator was now stronger than ever. They moved with an unspoken connection, like two parts of the same weapon. The battle began suddenly. Velcran ships fired energy beams that cut through space, striking the station's shields. Alarms blared as explosions rocked the air. Massive fortress. Human pilots scrambled into their fighters, launching into the void to meet the enemy. Sarah and Korzeth coordinated with the defenders, moving through Citadel Nova's corridors to lead ground forces against enemy boarding parties. The Velcran had planned to take the station by storm, sending elite soldiers to overwhelm human defenders from inside. Sarah fought with fierce determination, her pulse pounding as she dodged energy blasts and wielded her plasma rifle. Beside her, Korzeth moved like a shadow, tearing through Velcran invaders with powerful strikes and lightning-fast reflexes. The sound of battle echoed through the station. Metal clashed, energy flared, and cries of war filled the air. Every step was a fight for survival. Sarah's mind raced, thinking quickly to outsmart the enemy's moves. Her team trusted her, and the Predator's presence gave them strength. Outside the station, space fighters clashed in a deadly dance. Human pilots displayed incredible skill, weaving through laser fire and debris. Some fought bravely to protect the station's vulnerable points while others targeted the Velcran's command ship, a massive vessel directing the attack. Sarah's orders flowed like fire, directing pilots to strike where the enemy was weakest. Despite being outnumbered, the humans used clever tactics and the station's defenses to hold their ground. As the battle raged on, the Velcran unleashed a terrifying new weapon, a massive bioorganic creature launched from their command ship. It was a living war machine, covered in thick armor and bristling with deadly spikes and claws. It tore through the station's outer defenses, breaking through the walls like they were paper. The defenders scrambled to stop it, but the beast was relentless. Inside, Sarah and Korzeth knew they had to face this monster together. Their bond was their greatest weapon. The Predator and the Recruit moved through the damaged corridors, chasing the beast as it rampaged. Korzeth's powerful limbs smashed through debris while Sarah fired precise shots to slow the creature down. The battle was brutal, walls cracked, and sparks flew as they fought in close quarters. At one point, the creature trapped Sarah, its massive claw inches from her. But Korzeth leapt in front, taking the blow and roaring with fury. The moment was terrifying and powerful, showing that their bond was more than survival. It was sacrifice and trust. Sarah, filled with new resolve, used a special weapon designed for emergencies, a plasma grenade that could tear through the creature's armor. With Korzeth's help, she found an opening and detonated the grenade. The explosion shook the station and sent the beast crashing into a wall. It was finally down. The defenders cheered, but there was no time to rest. The Velcran fleet was still attacking, and the battle was far from over. In the following hours, Sarah led counterattacks to push the Velcran back. The enemy commanders, shocked by the human resistance and the Predator's power, began to lose control. Slowly, the tide of battle turned. Citadel Nova's shields held firm and human forces reclaimed key positions. Finally, the Velcran were forced to retreat, their fleet scattering into space. The station was battered and wounded, but it stood victorious. After the battle, the human commanders praised Sarah and Korzeth. They were hailed as heroes who had turned the impossible into reality. But Sarah knew the fight was not over. The Velcran were wounded but far from defeated. More challenges lay ahead, and the bond between human and beast would be tested again. As she looked out at the stars from the battered Citadel Nova, she felt the weight of responsibility but also hope. They had shown the galaxy that humans were not weak, not alone, and that together, with courage and fierce loyalty, they could face even the deadliest enemies. The story of the Recruit and the apex predator had become legend in the making, a symbol of a new era where humanity refused to bow to fear. The galaxy was watching, and the fight for survival had only just begun. The victory at Citadel Nova brought a moment of relief, but it was short-lived. The Velcran, though forced to retreat, were regrouping for a much larger assault. Their hatred for humanity, and especially for Sarah and Korzeth, had grown into a burning desire for revenge. They knew the human-predator alliance was the greatest threat to their empire's dominance, and they vowed to destroy it at all costs. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, whispers spread of a new Velcran superweapon, a colossal dreadnought named the Leviathan, capable of obliterating entire fleets with a single devastating strike. The Leviathan was more than just a warship. It was a fortress armed with the deadliest weapons ever created, shielded by layers of powerful energy fields and guarded by legions of elite soldiers. Its arrival meant the war was about to escalate into a conflict unlike anything humanity had faced. Before Sarah and Korzeth learned of the Leviathan through intercepted transmissions, the Velcran planned to unleash it near the human colony world of Arcturus Prime, a vital hub for mining rare minerals essential to the war effort. Losing Arcturus Prime would cripple human forces and leave many civilians exposed to brutal attacks. The situation was urgent, and Sarah, now a seasoned commander, was ordered to lead a daring mission, intercept the Leviathan before it could reach the colony. She gathered a small fleet of fast, heavily armed ships and prepared to confront the massive dreadnought, knowing that this would be their most dangerous battle yet. As the fleet jumped into the sector where the Leviathan was expected to appear, tension ran high. The vastness of space seemed almost silent, but every pilot's senses were alert, waiting for the enemy's arrival. Suddenly, the Leviathan emerged from hyperspace, a terrifying giant casting a shadow over the stars. Its hull gleamed with dark metal plates pulsing with energy. The dreadnought's weapon systems lit up, ready to unleash destruction. Sarah's fleet, though small in number, was determined to hold the line. They split into attack formations, weaving through the Leviathan's defensive fire. The first volleys of plasma cannons and missile salvos tore through space, and ships exploded in blinding flashes. The battle had begun. Sarah and Korzeth fought side by side in their own ship, a specially designed Hunter-class cruiser built for speed and firepower. Korzeth's strength was not only physical. The creature's instincts and reflexes made it an incredible co-pilot. able to detect incoming threats and guide Sarah's maneuvers with precision. Their bond was seamless, a perfect blend of human intelligence and beast instinct. Together they darted through deadly fire, targeting the Leviathan's vulnerable points: energy conduits, weapon turrets, and engine ports. Every successful strike was a small victory, but the dreadnought barely faltered. Its shields absorbed massive damage, and its counterattacks grew fiercer. The fight lasted for hours, the battlefield filled with the roar of explosions and the screams of dying machines. Many human ships were lost, their pilots giving everything to buy time for the mission. Sarah's leadership was tested to the limit, balancing aggression with caution, rallying her forces with unwavering determination. In one harrowing moment, their cruiser was nearly destroyed by a concentrated blast, sending alarms blaring and systems failing. But Korzeth's quick thinking and raw power helped stabilize the ship, repairing critical damage with improvised methods. The Predator's claws tore into control panels, rerouting power and restoring the ship's defenses just in time. Despite their efforts, it became clear that the dreadnought could not be defeated by conventional means. The Leviathan's core was heavily shielded and protected by automated defense drones. Sarah realized that the only way to stop it was to board the ship and disable the core from within. It was a desperate plan, but the stakes were too high to do anything else. She gathered her most trusted team, along with Korzeth, and prepared for a boarding mission. They launched in small assault pods, racing toward the Leviathan's surface as enemy fire tried to stop them. The tension was thick. If they failed, the entire fleet and colony would be doomed. Inside the Leviathan, the team faced horrors unlike anything they had imagined. The ship's interior was a maze of dark corridors, filled with hostile Velcran soldiers and terrifying bioengineered guardians. The atmosphere was thick with toxic gases and harsh red lights. Every step forward was a fight for survival. Sarah led her team with courage, her weapon blazing and her voice steady despite the fear. Korzeth moved with lethal grace, tearing through enemies with brutal efficiency, protecting Sarah and the team from deadly attacks. The closer they got to the core, the more intense the resistance became. Finally, they reached the heart of the dreadnought, a massive chamber where the Leviathan's power source pulsed like a beating heart. The core was surrounded by a complex web of energy shields and defense turrets. Sarah quickly assessed the situation and called for a coordinated strike. The team set explosives while Korzeth held off waves of attackers. Time was running out. With a final roar, the Predator charged the remaining defenders, giving Sarah the opening to trigger the detonators. The core exploded in a brilliant flash, sending shockwaves through the ship. The Leviathan shuddered violently. Its weapons went offline and the shields collapsed. The boarding party barely escaped as the dreadnought began to break apart. Outside, Sarah's fleet seized the chance, launching a final assault that shattered the enemy formation. The Velcran forces were routed, their superweapon destroyed. It was a hard-fought victory, won by bravery, teamwork, and the unbreakable bond between a human recruit and the galaxy's apex predator. As they regrouped aboard their cruiser, Sarah looked at Korzeth with gratitude and respect. The beast was more than a weapon. It was a partner and a friend. Their victory had changed the course of the war, proving that even the deadliest enemies could be overcome with heart and unity. The galaxy was watching, and humanity's legend was only beginning. The destruction of the Leviathan dealt a crushing blow to the Velcran's power, but the war was far from over. The Velcran Empire, wounded and enraged, shifted tactics. Instead of direct assaults, they unleashed a wave of covert strikes and brutal raids on human colonies scattered across the frontier. These surprise attacks hit supply lines, communication hubs, and undefended settlements, spreading fear and chaos. The human leadership realized they were facing not just a powerful enemy, but a cunning one willing to adapt and fight dirty. Sarah and Korzeth, now legends in their own right, were tasked with hunting down the hidden Velcran commanders responsible for these terror campaigns. It was a mission that would take them deep into hostile territory, testing their limits both physically and emotionally. Sarah's team gathered intelligence from captured enemy pilots and decrypted transmissions, slowly piecing together the Velcron's network of hidden bases. Each location was more dangerous than the last. Hidden asteroids rigged with traps, abandoned space stations crawling with Velcron mercenaries, and even secret underground facilities on remote moons. The danger was constant, and the line between hunter and hunted blurred. Throughout these missions, Sarah's bond with Korzeth proved invaluable. The Predator's senses detected ambushes and traps before they could strike, while its raw strength saved lives more than once during intense firefights. Together, they moved like shadows, striking swiftly and disappearing before the enemy could mount a proper defense. But the deeper they went, the more the toll showed on Sarah. The constant danger, loss of comrades, and relentless pressure weighed heavily on her. There were moments when doubt crept in. Questions about whether humanity could survive such a brutal war, whether the sacrifices were worth the cost. Korzeth seemed to sense this, often staying close, offering silent comfort. Their connection had evolved beyond simple partnership. It had become a source of hope and strength in the darkest times. When a mission went wrong and an ambush nearly cost them their lives, it was that unspoken trust that pulled them through. One of the most critical missions brought them to a Velcron base on a volcanic moon. The base was hidden beneath rivers of molten lava, protected by fierce Velcron warriors and automated defense systems designed to annihilate any intruders. The plan was to disable the base's communication arrays, cutting off the Velcron's ability to coordinate their raids. Sarah's team approached stealthily, using the planet's natural hazards as cover. The heat was intense, and the ground trembled beneath their feet, but they pushed forward with determination. Korzeth's powerful limbs smashed through obstacles and enemy lines, creating paths for the humans to advance. Inside the base, the battle was fierce and chaotic. Velcron soldiers fought with savage intensity, but Sarah's team, inspired by their leader's courage and the Predator's fearlessness, pressed on. They reached the communication core and planted explosives, preparing to escape before the blast. The countdown was nerve-wracking. Just as they were about to leave, reinforcements arrived, trapping them inside. The situation seemed hopeless. Sarah called out commands, directing her team to hold positions and cover each other. Korzeth stood guard at the exit, fending off waves of enemies with relentless ferocity. The Predator's growls echoed through the corridors, a terrifying sound to the Velcron. With seconds to spare, the explosives detonated, sending a shockwave that crippled the base's systems. Sarah's team made a desperate run through the collapsing tunnels, dodging falling debris and bursts of flame. When they finally escaped to their ship, battered and exhausted, the relief was overwhelming. The mission had been a success, but it came at a high cost. Several team members had fallen, and the scars of battle ran deep. Back aboard their cruiser, Sarah took a rare moment to reflect. She thought about the sacrifices made, the lives lost, and the battles still to come. Yet she also felt a fierce pride in her team and in the bond she shared with Korzeth. Together, they had turned the tide against an enemy that seemed unstoppable. Their fight was far from over, but each victory, no matter how small, was a beacon of hope in the darkness. As they set course for the next mission, Sarah knew the path ahead would be even more dangerous. The Velcron were desperate and cunning, and they would not stop until humanity was crushed or enslaved. But she also knew that with Korzeth by her side and her team's unwavering loyalty, they could face whatever horrors awaited them. The galaxy was watching, and the legend of the human recruit and the apex predator continued to grow, a story of resilience, courage, and the unbreakable will to survive. After months of relentless hunting and fighting, the war reached a new and terrifying stage. The Velcron, refusing to accept defeat, had formed an uneasy alliance with a shadowy and ruthless alien species known as the Zelthar. These creatures were feared across the galaxy for their brutal tactics and advanced technology, unmatched in stealth and infiltration. The Velcron hoped that with the Zelthar's help, they could finally crush humanity's resistance and regain control of the war. The alliance brought new weapons and strategies, turning the conflict into a deadly game of cat and mouse across space and planets. For Sarah and Korzeth, this meant facing enemies who were faster, smarter, and more unpredictable than ever before. The Zelthar specialized in guerrilla warfare and sabotage, striking at key human supply routes and communications outposts with near-perfect precision. Their ships moved silently through asteroid fields and nebulae, disappearing before anyone could respond. Each attack was a message. Humanity's enemies were adapting, growing more dangerous with every battle. The human command scrambled to develop countermeasures, but the Zelthar's technology was foreign and baffling. Sarah was called in to lead a special task force designed to hunt down and neutralize the Zelthar agents wherever they struck. The mission was deadly and delicate. One wrong move could lead to disaster. Sarah's team worked tirelessly, chasing leads through star systems darkened by war. They intercepted transmissions, hacked into enemy networks, and gathered intelligence from captured operatives. Still, the Zelthar remained elusive, striking from the shadows and leaving no trace. The psychological toll was heavy. Soldiers grew tense and restless, fearing ambush at every turn. Yet Sarah refused to let fear control her. She pushed her team harder, inspiring them with her resolve and the fierce loyalty she shared with Korzeth. The Predator's keen senses and tracking skills proved invaluable, detecting enemy presence long before human scanners could. Together they closed the distance to the enemy's hiding places time and again. One breakthrough came when they discovered the location of an Zelthar forward base hidden inside a dying star system. The system's unstable sun made conventional attacks impossible. The intense radiation and gravitational forces would destroy any ship trying to get close. But Sarah was undeterred. She devised a risky plan to use specially shielded stealth pods to infiltrate the base and gather critical information. The team prepared meticulously, knowing that failure meant certain death. Korzeth, with its natural armor and resistance to radiation, was the perfect scout and protector for the mission. The descent into the star system was tense. Shielded pods slipped through radiation storms and dodged swirling plasma flares, their crews holding their breath. When they finally reached the base, hidden in an asteroid belt near the star, the silence was eerie. The base was heavily guarded, with advanced Zelthar defenses that triggered alarms at the slightest movement. Sarah's team moved carefully, avoiding patrols and using their knowledge of the base's layout to stay hidden. Korzeth's presence was both a blessing and a risk. The Predator's size made stealth difficult, but its power allowed the team to take down enemies quietly, when needed. Inside the base, they uncovered terrifying secrets. The Zelthar were developing a weapon that could disrupt human ship engines and communications across vast distances, potentially crippling entire fleets. If unleashed, it would turn the tide of war irreversibly. Sarah's team quickly downloaded the weapon's blueprints and data, knowing they had to destroy the base before the project was completed. But as they prepared their escape, the alarm sounded. The Zelthar had detected them. A fierce battle erupted inside the cramped corridors. Human and Zelthar fighters clashed with brutal intensity. Korzeth fought with unmatched fury, its claws and teeth tearing through enemy ranks, buying precious time for Sarah to coordinate the team's retreat. Explosions rocked the base as they set charges to destroy the weapon research. The tension was unbearable as the countdown ticked down, forcing the team to push through waves of enemies to reach their pods. With seconds left, they escaped just as the base exploded in a blinding fireball, wiping out the dangerous weapon and dealing a severe blow to the Velkran-Zelthar alliance. The victory was hard-won and bittersweet. Several team members were lost, and the cost weighed heavily on everyone. Yet the destruction of the weapon gave humanity hope and bought crucial time to prepare for the battles ahead. Back aboard their cruiser, Sarah looked out into the stars, the glow of distant suns reminding her why they fought so fiercely. The war was far from over, but every victory, every sacrifice, strengthened humanity's will to survive. With Korzeth by her side, and her team united in purpose, Sarah was ready to face whatever horrors the galaxy would throw at them next. The legend of the human recruit and the apex predator continued to grow, a story of courage, resilience, and the relentless fight for survival in a universe filled with darkness. The final battle loomed like a dark storm on the horizon, the most dangerous fight humanity had ever faced. The Velcran and Zelthar forces had combined all their strength for one massive assault on Earth's last stronghold, the orbital defense station called Aegis Prime. This station was humanity's shield and sword, controlling fleets across the solar system and coordinating defenses for every colony still holding out. Losing Aegis Prime would mean losing everything. The entire galaxy watched as the enemy armada, countless warships bristling with weapons, approached like a tidal wave of destruction. The humans prepared for war, knowing this battle would decide their fate. Sarah stood on the command bridge of her cruiser, her heart steady despite the chaos around her. Beside her, Korzeth's imposing figure radiated strength and calm. The Predator's sharp eyes scanned the stars, sensing every movement of the enemy fleet. The tension in the room was thick, but Sarah's voice cut through it with clear commands. Her crew trusted her completely. They had followed her through fire and darkness, and now they would face the ultimate test together. The warships fell into formation, ready to defend Aegis Prime and strike back with everything they had. As the battle began, lasers and missiles streaked through space, painting the black canvas with deadly light. The Velcran and Zelthar attacked, in waves trying to overwhelm the humans with sheer numbers. Sarah's cruiser darted through the chaos, weaving between explosions and debris. Korzeth fought fiercely beside her, leaping from ship to ship during boarding actions, ripping apart enemy soldiers with savage power. Their teamwork was unmatched. Where Sarah's tactical mind saw openings, Korzeth's strength made them real. The Predator was more than a weapon. It was a symbol of humanity's unbreakable spirit. Despite their courage, the battle was brutal. Several Allied ships were destroyed, and the station itself shook under enemy fire. At one point, a massive Velcran dreadnought unleashed a weapon capable of ripping the station apart. Sarah ordered a desperate counterattack, rallying every available fighter and capital ship. The humans surged forward, their weapons blazing, their wills unyielding. Korzeth led a boarding team that infiltrated the dreadnought, sabotaging its systems from within. The Predator's ferocity turned the tide in close quarters, allowing the humans to disable the enemy's superweapon just in time. But victory came at a terrible price. During the final moments of the battle, Sarah found herself face to face with the Velcran warlord commanding the fleet. The warlord was a towering figure, ruthless and cunning, wielding weapons and technology unlike anything Sarah had ever seen. Their fight was fierce, a brutal clash of strength, skill, and willpower. The warlord mocked Sarah's determination, calling humans weak and doomed. But Sarah stood firm, fueled by the memories of fallen comrades and the hope of a free future. With Korzeth's timely intervention, she managed to defeat the warlord, ending the enemy's command and breaking the assault. As the enemy fleet retreated in disarray, cheers erupted throughout the human lines. The cost was high, countless. Lives lost, entire worlds scarred. But humanity had survived. Aegis Prime still stood, a beacon of hope in the dark galaxy. Sarah looked at Korzeth, knowing their bond had changed the course of history. The apex predator, once a fearsome beast of another world, had become humanity's greatest ally and protector. Together they had faced impossible odds and emerged victorious. The war was over, but its legacy would live on. Survivors rebuilt, shattered colonies, honoring those who sacrificed everything. Stories of Sarah and Korzeth spread across the stars, inspiring a new generation to stand strong against any threat. Humanity's place in the galaxy was no longer uncertain. It was earned through courage, unity, and an unbreakable will to fight. As peace slowly returned, Sarah and Korzeth prepared for whatever challenges lay ahead, knowing that together they were unstoppable. The galaxy had seen the power of the human spirit and the bond between a recruit and the galaxy's apex predator, and it would never forget.